Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever the fuck you're watching this. This is another episode of the Backyard Blitz, brought to you by Backyard Sports. I'm Gary Freeze and running solo tonight. A couple other parental commitments for the other boys on the show. So let's get started. Let's look, Dad, thanks for joining. Let's look at week 14. Week 14's in the books. Start the week off. Vegas taking the L against the Baker Mayfield led Rams. And it's astounding to think Baker Mayfield landed in LA on Tuesday. He said after the game he sort of felt like the Rams might claim him. So he actually booked a flight before they even finished the waiver claim. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I don't know if that's kind of hyperbole or what, but seems like he and Sean McVay have a little bit of something there in terms of a relationship. They mentioned a couple of times this flight that they got stuck on together, and they talked ball a lot. So I think there might be something there between Mayfield and McVay. I don't know how far it's going to take Mayfield. Stafford's under contract for a few years and for a lot of money. So any thoughts that maybe Mayfield is going to make himself a starter there in LA? I don't know that that's going to be the case, but I think he's got an opportunity here to kind of audition maybe for his next gig. Could be a stopgap somewhere, could be somewhere that they think that maybe they can get more out of him than Cleveland or Carolina ever really gave themselves an opportunity to. I still think Mayfield got done dirty by both Cleveland and Carolina. But on the other side of the field, if you're a Raiders fan, if you're a Vegas Raider, to be honest, this one has to sting and sting a lot, because you're coming into this game, you're thinking, oh man, we might be on a little bit of a run here. We're not out of the playoff chase. Devontae Adams is killing everybody. Derek Carr looks good. Josh Jacobs is leading the league in rushing. We've got something going with a pass rush that's pretty damn good on the other side of the ball too. Chandler Jones is still Chandler Jones. Max Crosby's still one of the best in the league as well. And looked like the Raiders were kind of trending in the right direction, and that fell flat on its face. And there's one truth right now in the NFL. The worst thing you could have is a 16-3 lead in the fourth quarter, because we saw Brady erase one the week prior, down 16-3, and came back and won. And then this week we see Baker Mayfield actually erase one on 2 days preparation with a brand new team, brand new offense, brand new coordinator, brand new scheme, making plays with Ben Skoranek, hitting Van Jefferson for that game-winning touchdown. The Raiders, you just have to feel like this has been a lost season for them. You go trade for Devontae Adams. You think you've got that missing piece that can really make your offense hum even better than it did in 2021. And it just seems like there were some growing pains with McDaniels. There were some growing pains with the offense and some of the effort. And we saw Derek Carr get emotional. It's a sad end to a season. They're essentially eliminated from the playoffs. I know mathematically they're not, but they're essentially eliminated from the playoffs now. And you're looking at 2023 for the Raiders. Are they going to keep Josh Jacobs around? Are they going to go find a running back? Maybe in the draft they can find somebody. Maybe in free agency there's a guy just kind of hanging out there. Who knows? But right now you feel for Raider Nation. Tough way to end the season. Looked like you had a little bit of momentum going, and all for naught, essentially, with the Rams knocking them off to start the week off. Buffalo and the Jets, and the plucky Jets, they just will not go away. Late in the game, they had the ball, kick a field goal, get within 8. They got a chance possibly if they can recover the onside, get down, score a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion. But Buffalo's able to hold on in a rainstorm. Nasty weather. Neither team could get going early. Then we got a little bit of an offensive output as the game wore on. But this was a slop fest. And the Jets like to muddy it up to begin with. They like to play defense, run the ball. They just seem to be able to churn out running backs, too. Like, Breece Hall was maybe one of the 6-7 best running backs in the league before he got hurt, the way he was playing to start the season. And then, they got Michael Carter, who's had a couple of good games here. And then this Bam Knight, Zonovan Knight, has a pretty decent game against the Bills, and he looks like he might be the next guy that's going to kind of make a name for himself in that Jets backfield. But Mike White, tough as fucking nails. He got beat up all day. That Bills defense was getting after him, folding him up like paper mache or origami. And he comes back in the game after probably, most likely, breaking some ribs. Hell of a tough performance by him. Dude looks like he might be the answer there in New York. If they can get to the playoffs, they might have a guy. I know Zach Wilson was drafted so high, but I think the ship has sailed on him. If you're Buffalo, this is one of those games, right? You won a game that it was sloppy, it was ugly, it's late in the year, and you were able to kind of move the ball, running it a little bit. Josh with his legs, you don't want to see him getting beat up all the damn time, but he's just so big and so effective. And they were able to churn out just enough to knock off a tough division foe. I don't think anybody wants to play the Jets in December and January because they've got a defense that travels and they've got a run game that can really muddy up the game and slow the game down. Cleveland and Cincy, and man, Cleveland, it doesn't look really good right now. Deshaun Watson still kicking rust off, self kind of inflicted in terms of not having played in nearly 2 years. Doesn't look really good right now. I expect that they'll turn it on a little bit, but Cincinnati, oh boy, they're heating up, and they're heating up at the right time of the year. December's here, and Cincinnati's winning games and stacking wins. And they lost Higgins, they lost Boyd in this game, and Joe Burrow was still able to find enough options, find enough weapons. He and Jamar Chase are on another level. Samaje Perine has done an incredible job being a complement in that backfield, filling in for Mixon when he's hurt, but also being a complementary piece when Mixon's playing. They've got something going there, and that defense is starting to play really well as well. We watched them give Mahomes and company trouble in the playoffs last year, and it looks like that defense is getting things going. And, of course, they've got that offense with Joey B, Jamar Chase, and if they can get Higgins and Boyd back healthy before the playoffs, you got to think that they're going to be a real tough out in the AFC and almost should be considered one of the favorites. I think it's a 3-horse race right now in the AFC with Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati. All right, Houston and Dallas, and oh man, Aaron, I don't know if you're watching, but you had to be kind of airtight at the end of this game. Pucker factor was about 1,000 for a Cowboys team that just seemed to get beat up a little bit by the Texans. They kind of played bully ball on them. Dameon Pierce was running the ball well. They were moving the ball up and down the field quite a bit against that vaunted Cowboys defense. And then I'm talking to my brother at the end of that game. He's a Cowboys fan. And when Houston gets the ball, back and they've got an opportunity to put some points on the board from first and goal, they couldn't punch it in, and then on fourth and goal, they decided to go for it. I'm telling him, like, I understand that if you score a touchdown, you put that game away. But you're the Houston Texans, okay? Let's be self-aware of what we are, who we are, and what we're trying to build, right? If I'm Lovie Smith, if I'm the coach of the Houston Texans, and we're up 3, and we've got the ball that close, I get it, but we've got an opportunity to kick 3, go up 6, a defense that's been kind of stymieing Dallas down the stretch. Dak had the bad interception, as Dak does. He just finds a way to have 1 or 2 of those throws a game that you're just like, what? And I literally posted on Facebook, LOL Dak, right? Like that's my response to it, because that's just who Dak is. They are prolific on offense, but there's always those moments that you're just like, golly, what the fuck was that? And I kicked the field goal. Right? I go up 6. I let my defense give them a vote of confidence. Like, we're going to kick this field goal. We're going to protect against a touchdown. I feel like the momentum just shifts so heavily. Oh, yeah. Dude was a monster all weekend. Was that Jalen Smith? I can't remember if that was Jalen Smith or not, but they've got some players there on that Texans defense. I'm not as familiar with the numbers. Changing of numbers, man, I'm still playing catch up with who's number 5 and who's not. But they've got some guys on that defense that were laying some lumber this weekend against the Dallas team that had been kind of playing bully ball against other teams. But I feel like back to the field goal. You got to kick the field goal, go up, and you have to use it as a moment. Yeah, I'm blanking on the name. Let me Google it real quick. But anyway, you kick the field goal, you go up 6, Jalen Petrie. That's right. Jalen Petrie. Kind of a no-name, but he was laying some lumber. And maybe they got a guy there that, you didn't expect to have at the beginning of the season. but you kick field goal, go up 6, and you're trying to teach your team this is how you win games, right? When we turn this thing around, this is how we're going to win games. We go up 6, and we know we're going to keep the team out of the end zone. Instead, we get desperate, and we have to go for it so that we can, quote unquote, put the game away. Would have, I'm sure, right? I get it, but it just you're 1-10-1. Take the points. You take the points. If Dallas goes down and scores a touchdown, fine. But you give them all the momentum when you get stuffed on a 4th down. I'll stand by that. You have to take the points there. For Dallas, this is a concerning game because of the way the Texans were able to play against you. And I look at some of the other teams in the NFC, and I look at a team like Washington that did this to Philadelphia. I look at a team like Minnesota, if they ever commit themselves to running the ball with Dalvin Cook, who could be maybe one of the 2 best running backs in the league. Yeah, right, Mahomes, sure, right, know your opponent. But I also just think you're teaching a team, like, when we're good, when we turn this thing around, we know going up 6 late in the game that we're going to be able to keep the other team out of the end zone, right? That's kind of the stance, and absolutely, right, know your opponent for sure. But that momentum, right? You get stopped on 4th down. That momentum is crazy. But to finish my thought on Dallas too, I'm concerned. And I know they're 10-3, and I know they've got a win against Minnesota, right? I know they've got another game against Philly. And I know that it looks good right now defensively for them in a lot of ways. But I look at, like I said, a team like Washington who did this to Philly, a team like Minnesota who could do this to Dallas, and a team like Philly who could do this to Dallas, running the ball, keeping the offense off the field, keep all those million-dollar weapons off the field, run the ball. Because Dallas got beat up between the tackles this weekend. And absolutely, I know they went and got Hankins, and that was supposed to help shore up the running game, shore up the run defense, but those linebackers got exposed this weekend, and I know Vander Esch had been playing really well the last few weeks, and it was a lot of Micah Parsons kind of vouching for him and kind of, hey, hyping him up, getting him going. Vander Esch got exposed a little bit again this weekend. If it's a wake-up call, then Dallas could be what Dallas thinks they're going to be this year. I worry that in December, late December, January, when we start to get into playoff time, that teams are going to be able to kind of, hey, we're going to step back. We're going to run the ball. I look at Tampa, who isn't afraid to run the ball with big old Lenny. Washington, Minnesota. I look at those teams, and even the Giants a little bit, and Seattle if they get Kenneth Walker back, because we're kind of at a point where we're starting to narrow down the number of teams it could be. Detroit, I don't know that they run the ball super well, but one of those teams that is not afraid to turn around and stick it into the belly of their running backs 25, 30, 35 times a game could be the answer to Dallas in the playoffs. And it could be another one of those seasons where Dallas fans turn around and say, well, fuck. We were all hyped up all season. We won 12. They're probably going to win 12 games, maybe 13 games. And then if it's an early exit in the playoffs, you're like, golly, another fucking early exit in the playoffs. And they, it's been kind of the running theme. And they've got to figure out what it is defensively that's going to allow them to be able to man up against these run-based teams and keep their offense in the game. But all that said, these are the games you have to win throughout the course of a season. You're going to have an ugly game here and there. The more of those ugly games that you win, the better your record's going to be, and of course, the better season you're going to have. But really, they've got to figure it out. Yeah, Aaron, if they don't get to the championship game, 100%, this is a bust of a season. And to be honest, I think there's a pretty strong contingent within that organization and in the fan base that thinks it's Super Bowl appearance or bust, right? I think there's a lot of talk that's kind of what this team's been built for, and we'll see how that goes. A lot of money being paid to a lot of different people on that team. I do think that there's some conversation inside that organization that if they don't get to the Super Bowl, there might be some changes coming at the top, starting with McCarthy, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right. Minnesota and Detroit, and this game felt weird from the start. So Vegas had this as Detroit 2.5 point favorites, right? Minnesota's 10-2 coming into the game. Detroit, of course, has been hot lately, but you just like Vegas is just minus 2.5 for Detroit. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, God, that feels weird. That feels like a Vegas trap line. Nope. Detroit put it on Minnesota. 1 p.m. Kirk or 12 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. Kirk Cousins was not good enough this game. The defense could not stop Minnesota. 34 fucking points. 34 points by Detroit. However, I don't want to just bag on Minnesota because Detroit has been turning a corner. And except for that loss to Buffalo on Thanksgiving Day, they've been the hottest team in football right alongside Washington. And they're right now in the playoff hunt. They're about a game out, game and a half behind the Giants and Washington, who have that tie on their record that changes the calculus. Detroit's about a game and a half out right now. They're a game behind Seattle. Seattle's a half game out, but I think Seattle's got a tough schedule down the stretch. I think the Giants have a tough schedule down the stretch. And I think Washington has a couple of games that they could, if they lose to the Giants this coming week, they've got San Francisco still. They've got Dallas still. They've got Philly still. This could be a situation where Detroit, maybe they sneak in. And I just want to remind everybody, yeah, hot as fish grease right now. I just want to remind everybody that in our season preview, I called Detroit my dark horse playoff team. And I got laughed at by both Andy and Raul. And I understand about 6 weeks into the season, I looked like a fool and Detroit was losing games that Detroit always loses, yada, yada, yada. But look out. They're hot right now. They've got a really, in my opinion, they've got a pretty damn easy schedule down the stretch with some banged up teams and some teams that are down this year. They could finish this season on a nice little run here and end up with 10 wins and end up in the playoffs. So just pump the brakes a little bit on reminding me that they were bad to start the season. I'm going to keep that feather in my cap just in case they do sneak into the playoffs here, because they've got a pretty favorable schedule down the stretch. I love what MCDC's doing there in Detroit. Philly, put it on New York, and honestly, 48-22 doesn't do this game any justice. New York got some garbage time points late. And they snuck some points, I believe, right before the half that kind of changed the calculus of the deficit of this game. 26 points, and it was never that close. New York, the clock has struck midnight. They lasted a couple more weeks than I gave them, but they're now 1-5-1, I think, in their last 7 games, and it's not good. It's not good. They're 1-4-1, I think, in their last 6. It's not good. Doesn't look good. They don't look like they've got any sort of rhythm about them. Daniel Jones doesn't look the part. They don't have wide receivers either. The offensive line is shaky again. And the defense hasn't been able to play up to the level that they were playing at for the first 7 weeks of the season. So New York's in a bit of trouble, and Philly really put it on them. Philly's scary right now because they can score points in bunches. If they can play a complete game against you, which they still didn't do here against the Giants, I think they've played like 1, maybe 2 games that I would call complete games this year. If they play a complete game, it's hard to imagine a team in the NFC right now that's going to beat them in January. Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Raul got this. I'm on loser island over here with Pittsburgh. And to be honest, this was a very weird game. Trubisky threw 2 picks inside the red zone, threw 3 picks in Baltimore territory. That's points taken off the board, especially those ones in the red zone. You're taking points off the board. And in a game that you lose by 2, that makes a huge difference. Attrition was the big thing in this game. Pickett goes down with a concussion. Tyler Huntley goes down. You've got Anthony Brown, right? Anybody remember where he played college? He played at Oregon. 1 season at Oregon. A no-name guy playing quarterback there, and then Trubisky obviously giving away points for Pittsburgh, and a 16-14 finish is kind of what you end up with. Pittsburgh had chances to win this game, and to be honest, I thought they should have. They even got a field goal blocked in this game too, so you're really giving away a lot of points in a divisional game that you lose by 2, that's a tough way to go. Baltimore, they're reeling. They've got to get healthy. They're banged up on defense. They got J.K. Dobbins back this week at 120 yards, I believe it was, rushing. There's some fantasy owners out there that are going to like him being back for the playoffs. But they need Lamar back, and they need Lamar back yesterday, honestly. This is a banged up Baltimore team, and without him, they're really going to struggle. They're going to have to play these 16-14 slop fest type games. Tennessee and Jacksonville here, and Raul and I both had Tennessee last week. This was bad. This was really bad because Tennessee come right out the gates. Derrick Henry is just running it down Jacksonville's throat. They go up 7-0 right away, and then the rest of the way, like they couldn't stop Jacksonville on offense, couldn't get anything going themselves on offense. The running game sputtered, and then they got behind and they gave up on it. Tannehill doesn't look like he's comfortable still after the injury. It's interesting to see what's going on in both of the South divisions because Tampa's like 6-8, I think they are now, and or 5-8 or 6-7, something like that. 6-7, I believe, and they're under 500 leading their division, and you've got Tennessee leading an awful AFC South as well. So it's interesting because it's going to be tight races down the stretch, but good Lord, yeah, Tiger Prince. Lawrence looked good, and I thought he was done 2 weeks ago when he got tackled there against Detroit, and that ankle just folded. But he's playing good ball, and honestly, I like what they've got going in Jacksonville. They've got it going in the right direction. Doug Peterson has kind of reinvigorated that city in terms of some interest in football, and they're winning some games. And that division is not settled yet. And Tennessee's got a pretty tight schedule down the stretch. So could be interesting. Could be interesting if Jacksonville can get back in the run in there in the AFC South and make this thing really interesting down the stretch. Kansas City and Denver. This got a lot closer than it should have. 23-0 out the gates. Kansas City had a pick 6. Mahomes had the weird underhand flip that everybody is still trying to call a no look. He's looking straight at the running back, like his eyes and his head are looking right at Jerick McKinnon. It's not a no look pass just because he underhanded it. Let's stop with the fucking nonsense. I will die on that fucking hill on this show. Stop calling passes where the quarterback is looking at the receiver. No look passes. It's stupid. You look stupid when you do it. Anyway, they go at 23-0 with that pick 6 or 24-0 with that pick 6, and you're like, holy shit, they're going to boat race the shit out of the Broncos. Russ looked really, really bad, and then suddenly a switch flipped. Mahomes threw 3 picks, and Russ threw 3 touchdowns. And if you've been paying attention, the bathroom race just got really tight. He's got a dozen bathrooms in his house, and he had 8 touchdown passes coming into the week, leaves the week with 11 touchdown passes and a concussion. So we'll see how his health is. But that touchdown race against his bathrooms just got real tight. Give me 1 second. This cat snuck into my damn office. I'm going to let him out real quick. All right, I figure nobody wants to hear that damn cat in the background. So sorry for the quick delay there. But Russ got cooking, and he looked good with Jerry Jeudy, 3 touchdown passes, and they suddenly get back in the game, and it's like 23-21 or something like that. And then or maybe 28, whatever it was, they were way out in front. Suddenly it got real tight, and Brett Rippon got them close, and then they had a chance at 34-28. They had the ball late. Mahomes had just thrown his 3rd pick. And then Brett Rippon turns around and throws another one right back to him, and that was kind of all she wrote for the game. But if I'm Kansas City, that's a shaky performance by Mahomes, and I gotta wonder, is that the sort of thing we're gonna see late in the season? I hope not. I don't expect it because it's Mahomes, but he doesn't have the safety blankets that he's had, especially with Tyreek Hill. Just, hey, go deep, Tyreek. I'm gonna throw it up to you. And if they can blanket Kelsey, a couple of teams have shown that they may struggle a little bit if you're able to blanket Kelsey and kind of keep him off the board. And Denver's defense is tough. They got boat raced early and never really recovered. All right, Carolina and Seattle, and wow, did this shake up the playoff picture? So Carolina's suddenly back in the NFC South race because, as we'll see on the next game, Tampa continues their bad ways and loses. But Seattle was in a playoff spot to start the week because of the win they got last week and the tie that Washington and the Giants had, and you know the records there. If Seattle had won this game, they'd have stayed in that playoff spot. But they go and they drop this game against Carolina, and to be honest, Carolina looked like the better team in this game. They were strong up front on both sides of the ball. They ran the ball really well, ran the ball kind of right down Seattle's throat, and they just mainly controlled the tempo of this game. It's wild to see because they have looked really bad at times throughout the season, but Steve Wilkes got them playing, man. He's got them playing good ball there in Carolina. And if you look at the two schedules between Carolina and Tampa Bay right now, there is a clear-cut difference in those two schedules. Tampa's got a real tough schedule down the stretch. Whereas you look at the other side with Carolina, they've got kind of a cupcake schedule down the stretch with a very important game against Tampa Bay in week 17, which, to be honest, could end up being the deciding factor in this division because Tampa looks bad and Carolina's on fire. I think they've won 5 out of 7 or something like that. They're right up there with, Detroit, Washington as the hottest teams in the league. Cincinnati's another team that's real hot. Teams are getting hot this time of year, and it's interesting to watch how the playoff race is gonna kind of shake out because as we see in this next game, Tampa Bay goes to San Francisco. Tom gets to play close to his hometown, where he was born, raised, grew up, watched Joe Montana and Dwight Clark and all the greats, and they get skunked. And Brady looked bad, out of sync, out of timing, late with throws, under throws, missed Mike Evans on an easy touchdown pass, underthrew Mike Evans on that pick that Dre Greenlaw got. And then, of course, after the game, Dre Greenlaw asked him to autograph the football. Tampa Bay looks really dysfunctional right now. They look really bad, really porous on defense. And man, Brock Purdy, jeez, bud, he played really well. Against the Tampa defense, like I said, they look really porous right now, but San Francisco's got a genius at the helm on offense, and he's going to put Brock Purdy in positions to succeed, and this is the product you can get. I mentioned the Trevor Lawrence tackle in the scary injury that he almost had. He avoided. Deebo Samuel, that's a big hit right now for San Francisco. Now, he got lucky too. That leg was torqued almost 180, and he gets out of it with like a sprain and a little bit of an MCL sprain in his knee. I don't know how. These guys must be made of rubber, some of these guys. I don't know how he avoided catastrophic injury on that play because that leg was trapped under a defender and torqued almost to the back. And he's fortunate avoided major injury, and they expect him back for the playoffs. So that's a big sigh of relief for Niners fans to get Deebo Samuel back before the playoffs because it looks like they're going to kind of coast to an NFC West title, barring a major setback for them and Seattle winning out. It looks like it's San Francisco's division to lose here. So really for them, getting healthy for the playoffs is going to be priority number one. Dolphins and Chargers. This was an interesting game because Tua was 3 for 17 at one point, and the Dolphins were never out of this game. Never out of this game. And in fact, they almost recovered the onside kick at the end of this game to have a chance at a late score to take the lead. The Chargers were able to cover up and seal it away. But man, this got really, really strange because Tua looked awful. Out of time, out of sync, kind of like Brady. Talks of, is he injured? That sort of thing. Everybody's kind of questioning, is he healthy? And they hang in there, but the Chargers get a big win against a very strong AFC contender. Miami's got some good wins over some good teams. Lull in the middle of the season when Tua got hurt. But, yeah, that was nuts. I've never seen a play like that. And to be honest, I didn't know what to make of it because I thought the ball was kind of dead and that the refs, just think about like, if there's even an inadvertent whistle because one of the refs thinks the play's over and then they're going to go kind of sort out the pile, that whole play's dead. And Miami keeps the ball because you see there's a clear recovery on replay, but they're not getting the points, right? And for you fantasy owners out there, you learned a rule about NFL scoring. You don't get yards for picking up a fumble and running it. You did get the touchdown, so it's a fumble recovery touchdown for Hill, but I've never seen a play like that. And of course, it's the fastest guy in the league who can just disappear on people, but the ball's at the bottom of the pile, and the guy who's on the actual bottom of the pile, like, reaches his hand and bats the ball, and it comes up, and Hill just like, oh, wow, it's in my lap, catches the ball, runs away, and just disappears on everybody. It's wild. 57-yard touchdown, fumble recovery for 6. It is probably one of the wildest plays I've ever seen. And the Dolphins have another of the wildest. Kenyon Drake with the Hail Mary where he outran Gronk. That was another crazy play, but that was pretty wild. That was pretty wild for sure. Yeah, honestly, I think everybody should be right now because that offense looked really out of sync. Tua wasn't even under pressure. That's the scariest part if I'm a Dolphins fan right now. Tua was not under any pressure in that game, really. He got sacked a couple of times and they got home a couple of times. But a lot of those throws where he was missing guys who were open, and he was missing by a lot. He wasn't under pressure. That, to me, if I'm a Dolphins fan, that's the scariest piece of what I saw on Sunday from the Dolphins against the Chargers. Let's finish the week up. Arizona, New England. I'm over here on Victory Island with the Patriots. Belichick does what Belichick does. Now, I want to make a note. Kyler Murray, it's confirmed ACL injury, and honestly, it's insult to injury in a lost season for the Cardinals to have your quarterback go down in December, and now you've got to worry about whether or not he's going to be ready for the start of next season because ACLs are weird. We see some guys come back super quick. We see other guys take a lot longer to come back. I'm looking at you, Chase Young. I want you to get 100% healthy, but it's just an example, right, of a guy who's 10, 11 months into rehab and still not getting on the field. I worry if I'm the Cardinals about whether or not Kyler Murray is going to be ready in 10 months, right? 9.5, 10 months when the new season starts. So it's one of those things. It's going to be a storyline to watch in the offseason. I think the Cliff Kingsbury employment story is going to be one to watch in the offseason as well, because this was a season where it felt like they kind of went all in, traded away picks to go get Robbie Anderson, even from Carolina, after all of the offseason going to get Hollywood Brown. And it felt like this was kind of their all-in year. And they fell short. They fell very short. They're going to have a high draft pick. Obviously, they preserved that first-round pick. But, yeah. In the end, to ask a quarterback to come into in the middle of a game against a Bill Belichick defense can be a tall task, even for a Colt McCoy who's a savvy vet. He's won some games in relief. He's been a starter in this league. It's just too much. And to be honest, I don't know who wants to play. I said it about the Jets. I don't know who wants to play the Patriots in the playoffs this year, to be honest. With the way that their defense is playing, Belichick's got them going. They've got a couple of rookies on the outside that are stellar. Was it that Jack Jones, I think his name is, number 25, I think his jersey number was, if you want to look it up. He made some big-time plays against DeAndre Hopkins, too. And they've got him playing well, and it just seems that Belichick knows how to churn those fucking cornerbacks out. They'll probably trade him away or let him sign somewhere else, get some compensatory picks, and turn him into another stud defensive back. But that defense is playing really well, and they're going to be tough to score on. And games get tight in the playoffs. And if the Patriots can somehow, some way, get something out of Matt Patricia other than handoff up the middle, pitch or screen to the outside, and then a check down short of the sticks, running route concepts short of the sticks. I think they've got an opportunity to be a tough out in the playoffs, but it's going to come down to that. I know they hit a seam ball to Hunter Henry that looked really good on offense, but it's just so far and few between with that offense that you got to get something more out of them to really be a contender in the AFC. But that defense is playing really well. All right, so that's it for Week 14. We had 6 teams on a bye. I'm going to float this out there for those watching. If you play fantasy football, how pissed were you that you had 6 fucking teams on byes this week? The last week of the season before the playoffs in most leagues, most standard leagues, last week of the season before the playoffs start, and you got 6 teams on a bye. I was pretty fortunate in one of my leagues. It's a dynasty league, and I've got like 4 guys on IR, four guys on IR. I've got Javonte Williams, Cooper Kupp, Breece Hall, and Darren Waller all on IR, and I had 5 guys on bye this week. So I essentially had a playoff spot mostly wrapped up and said, you know what, I'm running with it. And I got pretty fortunate that the teams behind me didn't win and score a bunch of points to pass me. But I can imagine out there was a lot of people panicking about 6 teams on a fucking bye the last week of the season before the playoffs starts. So, all right. Real quick before we get to our Week 15 preview, we're going to hit the most important part of the episode. Every episode gets dedicated to a fallen service member. We call it our Folds of Honor. Salute to service. All right. This week's episode goes out to Specialist Henry Mayfield Jr. He died January 5th, 2020, serving during Operation Octave Shield. Specialist Mayfield, at the time of his death, was 23, of Hazel Crest, Illinois. He died in an attack by Al-Shabaab militants on Manda Bay Airfield in Kenya. He was assigned to 1st Battalion, 58th Regiment, 164th Theater Airfield Operations Group out of Fort Rucker, Alabama. Specialist Henry Mayfield Jr. Till Valhalla, we have the watch. All right. Let's transition and take a look at, absolutely salute, take a look at Week 15's preview. Actually, I'm going to start with the power rankings since we just finished Week 14. Let's take a look at our power rankings for this week after Week 14's games. No change at the top for either Raul or me. I still have Buffalo over Philly. And I see Andy has Philly over Buffalo, and I can't fault them, right? But what it came down to for me is I get the records, right? Philly's now 12-1. Buffalo's 10-3. But for me, if it's a neutral field, no weather elements or anything like that, I kind of thought about this in the way of who am I picking? Who am I picking to win that game, right? Super Bowl setting, Bills versus Eagles in the Super Bowl. Who am I picking? And I still right now think the Bills have enough difference makers on both sides of the ball that they're going to be able to make plays against that Philly defense. And the Bills defense just finds ways, finds guys. It's next man up. They're a little banged up on defense, but they're still one of the 2 to 3 best defenses in the league. So for me, that was the difference at 1 and 2. You know, for me, it's kind of a coin flip. I get it. I get the records. I understand that they have, by far and away the best record in the league. But I just looked at it, kind of pairing those two as I think they're kind of the class of each conference right now. So I just stacked them up, said, who would I pick in a neutral setting? And for me, right now, it's Buffalo. 3 and 4. No change from Raul or I on 3 and 4. Andy's got the Chiefs at 3. Niners up at 4. I don't blame him for that. I worry a little bit about Brock Purdy kind of long term, but I get it. Right? The Niners are playing really good football right now. But for me, Cincy and Kansas City, I think the AFC is quite a bit stronger than the NFC right now. And Cincy is scary. I think they're the scariest team in football right now. From the point of like you don't want to play them. You don't want to play Joe Burrow when he's this fucking hot, this locked in, and Jamar Chase is back, right? And they've got a run game. They've got a run game this year. Imagine that. Since he's just, to me right now, they're a bit of a juggernaut. And if it wasn't for the fact that they're a few games back in terms of record, they might be right up there in the consideration with those top two teams. Kansas City, obviously always dangerous. Patrick Mahomes, a little shaky this past weekend once they got way ahead. I know sometimes it's easy to just kind of take your foot off the gas, but that to me leaves them a little bit behind Cincinnati. Dallas next for Raul and I. Andy's got Cincy. He's got Dallas a little bit lower. Dallas, it's they continue to kind of check off wins. I contemplated flip-flopping Dallas and San Francisco. I can't speak for Raul, but for me, I contemplated flip-flopping them, but I still worry just a little bit. Yeah, Cincy, they are scary. They are scary. Bills fans, Chiefs fans should certainly be keeping Cincy on their radar because Joe Burrow's locked in. Joe Burrow's locked in, and when he's locked in like this, they are a dangerous, dangerous ball club. But to just kind of finish the thought on Dallas and San Fran, I almost flip-flopped them. But for me, it's still Brock Purdy. I like what I saw from him against Tampa this past weekend. I trust Kyle Shanahan to put him in positions to succeed. But I also remember the Brock Purdy that I saw at Iowa State, who was a kind of a stat guy who put up a bunch of gaudy stats with some really good weapons around him, Breece Hall especially, right? But I think he's kind of limited in terms of what he can do on the football field. He had a lot of easy throws this weekend against a Tampa defense that they're like Jekyll and Hyde. One week they seem to be able to get some pressure on the quarterback. The next week they can't get anywhere, and the guys on the back end can't cover anything. So I give it one more week. If San Francisco comes out one more time, yep, I love the wordplay. Brock looks pretty good. He did. He looked really good, pretty good against Tampa Bay. Give it one more week, and to be honest, even if Dallas goes out and wins this weekend and San Francisco is able to put another win on the board, for me, I probably will flip-flop Dallas and San Francisco. Minnesota next for Andy, where we have San Francisco. Minnesota's 7 for Raul and I. I think, kind of 3 through 7, 4 through 7. You might be able to make arguments for teams to kind of jostle back and forth. For me, Minnesota, that's a bad loss. That's a bad loss against a really hot Detroit team. I understand. But that's a bad loss, and I contemplated sliding them even farther down. But to be completely honest, like after 7, it's a lot of kind of also-rans right now, with the exception of a couple of really hot teams in Washington and Detroit sitting back there. Haven't cracked the top 10 for me yet, so really kind of 8 through 10, kind of a step below Minnesota, and that's where I looked at it. They're still 10-3. They're another kind of Jekyll and Hyde team. They play tight games and win them, or they get blown out essentially. And I've got a graphic later that's going to kind of illustrate some of that. 8, I've got the Chargers. Andy and Raul both have the Ravens. I've got the Ravens at 10. I worry about the Lamar Jackson injury. Are they going to lose games here to get behind and have to go on the road in the playoffs? I also, right now, without Lamar Jackson, I even struggled to kind of put them in the top 10. I know that defense is playing really well. They got J.K. Dobbins back, and they won another game this past weekend. But I struggled to even move them into 10 if it hadn't been for other teams kind of playing themselves out of it. They might not have been in the top 10 for me. 9, I still got the Jets. I had the Jets at 9 last week. Miami and Tennessee for the other 2 here. Tough teams, tough to kind of rack and stack here. Like I said, 8 through 10. Jets, though, they're plucky on defense. Mike White is tough as nails, makes some challenging throws when they've got an opportunity on offense. They've got a pretty good run game still with Bam Knight, despite the Breece Hall injury. They're still running the ball really well. Garrett Wilson looks the part. There's a reason he went so high in the draft. They're getting a good return on him in terms of the draft capital they spent. And for me, the Jets, the defense is the X factor, honestly. And then we finish up with Dolphins, Chargers, and as I mentioned, the Ravens. I slotted them at 10. I struggled to get them to 10. But truth be told, behind them sits a couple of teams that I'm still wishy-washy on, despite my faith in the Lions to start the season. It's tough to win out and win 8 of 9, and get into the playoffs. But we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. But that's our power rankings as it stands in Week 15. All right. Preview of Week 15. We're all done with byes, so all 32 teams will be on the slate this week. Niners, Seahawks. I know it's in Seattle, but I didn't love what I saw from Seattle last week. Kenneth Walker's back this week, which could be an X factor for them. I like San Francisco to run the ball, control the ball. Maybe missing Deebo Samuel is going to be a problem, but they've been able to get Ayuk involved, and I think we're going to see a little more George Kittle this week. Seattle has struggled a bit against tight ends this year, and I think Seattle or San Francisco is going to get Kittle going, and that's what the difference is for me. We got full weekends from here on out. Bye weeks are all done. So we got full slates of football, and that's the Thursday game. So let's get to some Saturday football. We not only have a full slate of games, we've got a full weekend. College football is done in terms of their regular season games. You'll have bowl games scattershot throughout until we get to the college football playoff and the New Year's Six. But hey, NFL's moving some stuff to Saturday. So starting the Saturday slate off, we've got Indy and Minnesota. We're unanimous here, Minnesota. I think it's more of a testament to Indy's just not a good football team. Jonathan Taylor could be a difference maker in this matchup. If he can get going on the ground, maybe Indy can stick around. But I just think Minnesota's got too many weapons on offense, and they're going to bounce back after a tough loss to Detroit. Baltimore and Cleveland in the middle window on Saturday. I've got Cleveland. I don't love what I saw from Baltimore. I'm not 100% confident that Tyler Huntley's going to play this week. And if they've got to start Anthony Brown, it's going to be really bad for Baltimore. And they're going to have to hold Cleveland to 7, maybe 10 points to have a chance to win this game. If they can steal a defensive touchdown, even that'd go a long way. This could be a field goal battle. Could get some weather in Cleveland this weekend. Cleveland and Buffalo might get some weather this coming weekend. But for me, I just think that Deshaun Watson's going to start to shake some of that rust off. We're going to see this offense get going a little bit, and give me maybe a 16-13 type win for Cleveland here against Baltimore. Just don't go up 16-3 to start the fourth quarter. Buffalo, Miami to finish off the nightcap here on Saturday. Going to be some nasty weather, and the team from Miami was in California this weekend. It was 55 degrees, and they had heaters on their sidelines. So that snow that's coming to Buffalo this weekend, it's going to be a tough go for the team from fucking South Florida who was hurting in Southern California this past weekend. So give me Buffalo, probably a knockdown, drag out, run the ball quite a bit this weekend. Look for Devin Singletary to kind of be a focal point. Maybe James Cook gets himself some extra totes. A low-scoring game probably because of the weather, maybe a 17-13, 17-10 type game. But that Miami team is not going to want to play in the fucking cold. Yeah, Aaron, the heaters in L.A., and it was 55 degrees. Such a shit show. All right. New Orleans, Atlanta. Andy's on the island here with Atlanta against New Orleans. This is kind of a slap fight between two teams. I went with New Orleans because I think that defense is going to terrorize a rookie quarterback. Desmond Ritter's going to get his first start. I think it's probably 4 to 6 weeks too late. They should have gone to him a long time ago. Mariota has struggled mightily. They've been pretty fortunate to be in some games that they were able to kind of scrap through. Now we get to see what they got in Ritter, and they're going to see whether or not they need to draft a quarterback next year with one of their high picks. I like Desmond Ridder, but I also don't like him having to face fucking New Orleans in New Orleans for his debut game. That's a tough defense to start with, and that's an incredibly tough venue to have to play in. So New Orleans, for me, this could be a game where that defense gets 6 or 8 sacks. Atlanta's going to have to run the ball a ton and have some success to stay in that game. All right. Pittsburgh, Carolina. Raul's on the island here with Pittsburgh. I've got Carolina. They're playing good football, running the ball well, playing some good defense, complementing it with some timely third down conversions through the air. Carolina, I think, is just going to stay hot. Pittsburgh, it's obviously a lost season for them. They're rebuilding. I think they've got some pieces in place, but they're not, they're not a real competitive team this year in a lot of ways. That defense could be scary. TJ Watt is starting to kind of get back into form, and they're playing good defense, but I just think that offense is going to struggle to score. This is going to be another low-scoring, tune-out, you know, 15 to 12 type game. Philly, Chicago, this could be a fun game to watch, right? I think Philly wins, but I really like where Chicago's offense is headed. Justin Fields has been picking his spots to run the ball. They've been able to turn around and put it in the belly of David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, and they seem to have gotten a little chemistry with Cole Kmet and Justin Fields, and Darnell Mooney can make a play here and there. I think this could be a high-scoring affair. I think Philly's going to have their way with Chicago's defense, and I think that Chicago offense could potentially keep pace, maybe a game in the high 20s, low 30s. Look for Justin Fields to be the Justin Fields he's been the last 4 to 6 weeks, moving the ball with his feet. He's had a couple long touchdown runs, but also still getting it done a little bit through the air. Him and Cole Kmet seem to have a little something going there after 2 years of really Cole Kmet being a meh kind of guy after being a pretty high draft pick and a highly touted prospect out of Notre Dame. Kansas City, Houston. I don't know if there's a lot to say about this game. Houston's been super competitive all year, but this is probably where that comes crashing down. They've been blown out, I think, once, maybe twice this year. This will probably be number 2 or 3, whatever it is. Kansas City, and I think they're going to clean up some of the things that they had issues with last week that led to the turnovers. This could be an ugly game. Dallas and Jacksonville. This one I waffled on. I waffled on this one because of the way Jacksonville has been playing football lately. I think that it could pose some problems for the Dallas defense. But ultimately, in the end, I think that Dallas's offense does enough against a Jacksonville defense that's been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde this year. Could be a shootout in this game as well. Maybe a high-scoring affair like the Philly and Chicago game. I think will be depending on weather. Chicago's got weather potentially that could change things, but I think they'll get the ground game going. But anyway, Dallas and Jacksonville could be a high-scoring affair because I think Jacksonville's playing good offense. Aaron, you mentioned Tiger Prince. Sunshine's been playing good football. Looks good under center. Doug Peterson's got that offense kind of humming. And ETN has been really good running the ball. Didn't have a stellar game this past weekend, but I think they just had so much success through the air. Evan Ingram had almost a career day. He might have had his best career day, to be honest, this past weekend. And they went away from the run because they were having so much success through the air. I think ETN this weekend, look for him to get some totes. Look for him to run the ball against the Dallas defense that just showed against Houston. They're a little susceptible to the run. We can see Jacksonville put a focus there. But I think we see Dallas eke another one out here against an AFC South foe. Detroit and the Jets. I'm on the island here with the Jets. To be honest, it's just about the defense. I think that this could be a very nip-tuck, last possession type game. And I love where Detroit's headed, but I really like Robert Saleh and this Jets defense. I think they play incredibly sound, fundamental, technically sound, aggressive, pressure defense, and they've got some dogs on that side of the ball. I think Jared Goff may come back to earth a little bit this week with some pressure from this Jets defense. Yeah, Jets, Jets. I got a cousin who's a Jets fan too, so he may like to hear that news. But I do think that the Jets get it done here against the Lions, mostly because of that defense. Next game on the docket, Arizona and Denver. A battle for first overall pick, right? Two really bad teams, two teams that might be missing their starting quarterback, depending on if Russ can get out of concussion protocol in time to play the game. Right now, it's slated as, they're expecting Brett Rippon to probably start the game. We'll see how the week progresses in terms of concussion protocol, but not a lot to say about this game. No Kyler Murray for the Cardinals, possibly no Russell Wilson for the Broncos. This could be a pretty ugly game. Vegas and New England. Andy and I are on New England, and Raul's over here on Vegas Island. For me, it's really the Turd Bowl. Yeah, honestly, those two teams, especially if Murray's out, maybe even with Murray because they haven't been very good this year. But that's going to be a tough watch. Vegas and New England, though, for me, New England's defense is playing really well. I expect Belichick to double cover Devontae all day, make Derek Carr push it to other guys on that offense, and I don't know that Josh Jacobs is really going to be able to move the ball against a pretty damn good New England defense. This could be a real low scoring affair. Something a 17-16 type game. Not to reopen a wound there, Vegas, with the 17-16 score, but I just think this is going to be a low scoring affair, and I think that the Patriots are going to get just enough to get it done. Tennessee and the Chargers. Raul's on Tennessee Island here. A lot of island games here down the stretch. And for me, the Chargers are playing better football right now. They got a pretty good win against a tough Miami team last week. They're getting healthy. Mike Williams is healthy. Keenan Allen's healthy. Defensively, they've still got studs on that side of the ball. I just can't figure out why they don't get the consistent play that they've been that I would expect. But Tennessee's trending in the wrong direction right now. They've had some trouble running the ball. Now, LA is susceptible to the run, so maybe this is the weekend they get it going. But I just think that they just got carved up by Trevor Lawrence and his cast of characters. I think Justin Herbert's going to have a fucking field day. I could see Herbert going for 4 bills and probably 4 touchdowns, to be honest. So for you fantasy guys out there, if you're looking for some studs to play this weekend, look at that Chargers offense and those weapons. Eckler is a Swiss Army knife, and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are a formidable pair on the outside. Tampa Bay, Cincinnati. I've always had the adage of don't bet against Tom Brady in December and January, but this isn't that Tom Brady, and this isn't that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. They look just miserable. They're out of sync. They can't get anything going. And Cincinnati, they've been on a roll. Now, if they don't have Higgins and Boyd, that could change some things because Tampa can play some certain defenses and whatnot. But if they're healthy and they've got their full magazine of weapons to throw at Tampa Bay, look out. Cincinnati's just on fire. And that Tampa defense has been playing poorly. San Fran put up 35. If they play the same defensive game against Cincinnati that they played against San Fran, Joe Burrow might put up 50, honestly. Look out for that. You might see 50 points out of the Bengals this weekend. Giants, Commanders, and I'm going to say it again. I'm preparing myself to be let down by a team that I'm starting to get confident in. Washington's been running the ball well. Washington's been playing pretty sound defense, and despite the tie against the Giants 2 weeks ago, well, not quite fully 2 weeks ago, but 2 NFL weeks ago, essentially, they've been playing really, really good football, and they've been hot. This is a game I'm picking them to win. However, the fan in me is fully prepared that Sunday night at about 11:30 p.m., I'm going to be posted on Facebook, same old fucking Washingtons, fuck you, Ron, fucking blah, blah, blah. But I'm picking them to win because the Giants are on a severe, severe downslope. They're going uphill on ice, and it ain't good. But again, this is a game. This is Washington's game to let me down. Please don't do it. Rams, Packers to finish out the week on Monday night. I almost went Rams in this. I really wanted to, but I do worry. Yeah, that'll be absolutely 100%. That'll be a candidate if Washington drops that goddamn game against the Giants. I wanted to go Rams because I love the Baker Mayfield story. I've got a soft spot for Baker. I like the guy. I think he can play. I think he's gotten a bad rap. But I look at it from the perspective of the Rams aren't a good team. They don't have weapons, and I think that Aaron Rodgers, especially if Aaron Donald isn't playing again, which I believe he's expected to miss this game as well. I think Aaron Rodgers is gonna have a good day against a banged up, undermanned Rams defense that hasn't been what the Rams defense has been in the past. So give me the Packers. Give me the Packers, but I'll lightly be cheering for the Rams and Baker Mayfield. All right. That's our Week 15 preview. We've gone over Week 14's games, Week 15's preview. So let's get to a little bit of Capper Facts. All right. Only a couple of Cap Facts this week. But let's start with Tom Brady should have stayed retired. I'd be curious to hear the other guys' thoughts on this, but my thoughts on this, honestly, he had a pretty sweet gig at Fox. I know last season didn't end the way he wanted it to end, and I know that he had to think that if they were healthy last year, they'd have had a real legitimate shot at winning the Super Bowl. And I believe the same thing. I do. They've been really bad this year. And you kind of had to see the writing on the wall when they lost all those players to free agency. And, of course, the same guys are getting hurt again this year. They were a different defense last year when they could put Vea and Sue in the middle and put Pierre-Paul on the outside along with that Smith Justin Shoyinka, not Smith. But they just don't have the horses this year. And they don't have the run game that they had because that offensive line is depleted. Maybe their best offensive line last year is up in Cincinnati. They lost Ryan Jensen to injury to start the season. I think that's probably the most underrated thing about the whole season is the impact that injury to Ryan Jensen had on this Tampa Bay offensive line. He was kind of their barometer. He was kind of the pulse in the room. He was the nasty guy that would go after people and kind of amp everybody up. He'd take a personal foul every once in a while just to get under the craw of the defense. And of course, as the center, you're kind of the general, right, of that offensive line. So it's a mess. It's a mess in Tampa. And to be honest, had a sweet gig. And I know it's still there. Fox will take him back. But, man, it's going out in a bad way. Unless they can get hot in the playoffs, it's a bad way to go out for Tom Brady. And maybe it means he comes back another year. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Our last Cap Facts here, and I've got a graphic to go along with this. So, Capper Facts, the Vikings are the worst 10-3 team ever. And, of course, the graphic – you see the 5 teams with 10 wins in the NFL this year. Plus 138 for the Eagles, plus 132 for the Bills, plus 131 for the Cowboys, plus 86 for the Chiefs. And the Vikings have 10 wins and 3 losses, and they have a negative point differential on the season. And, of course, you get the crazy-eyed dragon who doesn't fit in. One of these things is not like the other. And, yeah, I have to say facts on this because it's so strange to see a team that is 7-0 in one-score, or maybe even 9-0, right? 9-0, I think, in one-score games. I think they only have 1 win of 2 scores or more on the season, and 3 losses. One of those was a 40-4 or whatever, 40-6 shellacking by the Cowboys, and then they get beat up a bit this weekend by the Lions. And they got beat up by the Eagles. So that's how you get your negative points differential for a team that's 10-3. I picked them as kind of a possible dark horse out of the NFC to make the Super Bowl, but not this team. Not this team. Not the way they're so Jekyll and Hyde. They can't run the ball consistently, and that really affects them. Justin Jefferson has been all-world. But he does disappear at times in games. And I don't know what happened to the defense the Vikings were fielding for the first 9 weeks of the season. They haven't been really good on defense the last few weeks. And Kirk Cousins continues to kind of put up stats and whatnot, but it's it's not enough. And I do think that I can't think of another time when we had a team that had 10 wins this late, or this early in the season at 10-3, 10-2, 10-1 that I would say was a worse team than this Vikings team. The only one that I think might contend is last year's Cardinals team. They were the last undefeated team. But right now, the way the Vikings look in their losses, this has to be. They may not have the same collapse, right? I don't expect the same collapse that the Cardinals had last year after their undefeated start to the season, but it's not good. It's not good, and I don't see them making a run in the playoffs. So, yep, facts. Worst 10-3 team I think ever. All right, we have one submission this week for the mailbag, so let's get in our bag. And I'll say the same thing I said last week. I was really late with the post this week, so I appreciate you guys tuning in. Those of you who've been in and out of the show. I was really late with the post on the page, just like I was last week. So I'm going to work to be better next week, get it out early, and see if we can't get a couple more mailbag questions. But if you send them in, you get a question at the end of the day on Sunday that you want to hear us kind of talk about, maybe you can chime in the chat. Let us know. Shoot us a private message, right? Send us something to the page, post it on the page. I'll try to get the weekly show post up earlier though, so that it's a reminder for everybody that if you do have questions, send them in. Anyway, my dad asks, is Josh Allen correct that the short, quick passing game is capable of replacing a good portion of the run game? I think so. I think it's a great question. I think it's a great statement by Josh Allen, and I think it's true. And I think we saw this with the Patriots teams that Tom Brady won with, kind of down the stretch of when he was there in New England. They had Corey Dillon, at one point. They had LeGarrette Blount, who was kind of a hammer. You look at a guy like a Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, or I'm blanking. There's Lawrence Maroney, right? Guys like that were kind of hammers for them. But you look at what they had down the stretch, and they had Sony Michel in that last Super Bowl, right, where they beat the Falcons with the unbelievable comeback. It's James White here. It's in that kind of short game, and I'm that's not the last Super Bowl they won, but that Super Bowl, right? They didn't really have a running game, but they were able to kind of get the passing game with James White, get that going, and make things happen. And even with Tampa Bay, right, the Super Bowl that they won, little kind of dinks and dunks, and they got just enough out of Leonard Fournette, and Ronald Jones were pretty decent as a change of pace. But it's the quick passing game. It's the slot receivers getting the quick game. It's the screens. It's the ability to kind of get the ball on the edge and let your playmakers make plays. And the Bills signed Cole Beasley back this week. And I think that's a sign of just how they feel about being able to get the ball out quick to guys that can win on routes early. Isaiah McKenzie hasn't been the slot receiver they thought he would be. So they bring a guy like Cole Beasley back in. He was sort of a safety blanket, right, for Josh Allen at times when he was there, earlier in his career for Beasley. Yeah, I do. I think that the quick passing game can, because you just get it out and get your playmakers the ball in their hands. That's to me, safe throws and possibly plays that can pop, right, if you get it to playmakers on the edge. So I'm with Josh Allen on this. I think that the quick passing game can replace a good portion of the run game. I'm going to caveat it just like I caveat the whole fact of like analytics can be useful if your team is good. I think here you've got to have a quarterback that can get the ball out quick and make quick decisions. So I do think that it can replace a good portion of the run game. All right. Let's finish up with our last couple of segments here. First up, the MK. So I had a couple of candidates from the same game, and then I had a couple of candidates from a couple of games on Sunday. But I'm going to Thursday, man. I can't get over what Baker Mayfield did this week. Showing up on Tuesday, playing a game on fucking Thursday. Didn't even start the game. They sent Wolford out there to kind of see how he felt. Mayfield comes in and they struggled. They struggled mightily. But it got late in the game and they just said, okay, go out there and just play in a sandbox, right? Or the sand lot. Draw it up in the dirt, go make some plays. And Baker Mayfield made plays. Ben Skoranek made plays. Van Jefferson made plays. They had some opportunities late to really get after the Raiders, and they did. They did. And Baker Mayfield, man, what a win. What a notch in your belt. And I hope I'm here. I'm here for the Baker Mayfield redemption story. And I hope this is what starts it. So for that, Baker Mayfield, damn, okay. All right, let's finish up with congrats, Brian. Some bad football this weekend, and I went through a lot of different candidates for congrats, Brian here, but um, I'm gonna kind of go the funny route here, and I'm gonna go Tom Brady, right? Reports are that after the game, he skipped the post game shower because he was trying to make a point to his teammates that he wasn't happy with the performance. I I don't know. Yeah, I do too, Dad. But I don't know what sort of statement you're trying to make that you didn't show up and get naked with your teammates in a shower. Uh, but it ain't the statement I think you should be making, Tom. After a game that you looked pretty bad too, like I don't think it's a secret to Tom that he didn't play very well this weekend. I don't know what sort of statement you're trying to make by not showing up to the shower after the game, but I'm sure wherever you ended up after, they didn't appreciate how ripe you were. So for that, I say, congrats, Brian. All right, that brings us to the conclusion of the episode. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, those that have kind of come in and out of the show. Dad, Aaron, thanks so much for all the comments this week. Love seeing the comments. Makes the show go by so much more smooth. Nobody wants to just sit here and listen to me and the other guys when they're here, just kind of talk at you. Really appreciate the interaction. It's been another great episode. We'll see y'all next week when we wrap up week 15, talk week 16. We're in moving season. We are in moving season, and every week has heavy playoff implications. A couple of big matchups this weekend that could decide divisions, could decide wild card races. So let's tune in and see what moving season does for us. And we've got a full slate of games across a full weekend. We've got Thursday football. We've got 3 games on Saturday, and we got a full slate on Sunday and Monday Night Football. For all the boys here at Backyard Sports, appreciate y'all support. We are out.